Hello everyone, my name is Jorge Diaz, President and Founder of Larry Jacob Internet Marketing and an Infusionsoft Certified Consultant. I'm here with another certified Infusionsoft type, Michele Bryant today. Michele, how are you today?
I am good. Thanks for asking.
Good. Thank you for breaking out of your busy day to meet with me. But Michele and I met at our partner certification course. So her and I got certified on the exact same day, right?
Yes.
And one thing I've been noticing about her is that she, like me, is a blogger. She uses a lot of content to get her word out. And interestingly enough, we're talking and we use it in similar but also in dissimilar ways with different tactics. And we wanted to share with everyone, hey, here are things that we do that works. There might be things that you all might take on as well. So Michele, everybody kind of knows me. Why don't you tell them just a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you live?
Absolutely. On the business side, I am a growth specialist for coaches and consultants. So I work with people who have online businesses that they're trying to grow in strategic ways. So I help them to just obviously use marketing automation as a certified partner. That's a big part of it, but also using it in a strategic way that fits their following and what they do very well, rather than using kind of just cookie cutter marketing automation strategy. And in my downtime, I live in the middle of nowhere in the woods at 6,000 feet with my husband. Nice. And I have two adorable little pit bulls. And pretty much I just exercise, work, and travel. So
and you're in Southern,
right?
And you're in Southern California, right?
Yeah, I am. Although I don't get the Southern California weather because we're so high up in elevation that we get snow actually. But we're only about an hour from Palm Springs, so whenever we get too sick of the snow, yeah, we just drive to Palm Springs.
So you're not on the desert side; you're on the other side.
I'm in the middle actually. If I go down one way, I come out in Riverside, which is not very well known, but if I go down the other way, I'm in Palm Springs.
Go figure. Okay, so you work with coaches, and you're trying to get noticed by coaches who could potentially make use of your services, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. So, I mean, we started this conversation because you recently posted an article about when is the right time to use marketing automation in your business, right? So why don't you kind of walk us through the thinking behind that article? You were able to get it published. Walk us through that experience.
Yeah. So the thinking of that article had a lot to do with what I personally perceive to be an increasingly just not authentic discussion around marketing automation. As I'm sure you know and have experienced, it's a very, very powerful tool, but it's not magic, right? Like you can't just turn on a campaign and it's not going to make you millions while you sleep. Right. Unless you do it right, and it takes time to get there.
No, right. Patience and persistence, trial and error.
Exactly, and strategy, and just knowing what works and what doesn't for you. So whatever, that's pretty obvious to all of us who work with marketing automation on a daily basis. But to the average entrepreneur who is not familiar with marketing automation, what that looks like to them from the outside is that this is a tool that they can just turn on and everything's going to change for them. And then when they actually get into it, they're confronted with the reality of the situation, which is that it's a lot of work. You need support. You can't just learn it and do it yourself for the most part. And that there's a lot of, guess and check to get to where it is, selling while you sleep.
Well, right. And you're talking, I mean, right now you're focused kind of on the technical aspects, but content is important. Like, for example, I work with a client that for the longest time I said, look, they sell a lot of furniture and it's a really nice website and they do very well. But if you looked at them online and then you looked at their discussion in person when they're in sales conversations, they're completely different. And so they've actually hired content specialists to work with them. And 6 months into that, it's really starting to have effect. You see the content, you now look at the site and you get it, where before it was, here it is, it's a brochure and then it never changes.
Absolutely, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because in that blog that you mentioned, one of my criteria was that you have a great deal of content already, that is going to waste. So marketing automation is one way to increase that content's impact, right?
Sure.
But something that you probably don't know is I do a webinar called Marketing Automation One-on-One, which is to help people figure out how to know if they should be moving into marketing automation. So similar to the blog, but I also touch on who it's not right for. And one of the first things that I say it's not right for is anybody who doesn't have content to be putting out. Because email marketing doesn't work if you don't have anything to say in your email.
Right.
Right. It really does have to be valuable.
And starting to write content from zero to something is not trivial by any means.
No. Yeah. And I found that, yes, you do need, if you are in that situation, you need to bring in an expert, because when you start writing content for the sake of only selling and not for the sake of giving value, the consumer sees right through that, right? Yeah. And I'm sure you know that because I see almost daily you put out content and it's always value forward. Whereas some people think that if they just put anything out, people are going to love it. And that's not the case.
No, right. And again, I mean, you kind of pointed that out. I rarely, if ever, sell in my blog. I'll refer to things. I mean, it's not like I don't do any selling. But for the most part, I'm sharing. Like, for example, right now, this is content that goes out on our blog. And we're talking about, the value of using content, blog marketing, to promote yourself. And that's kind of one way to make use of marketing automation. But if I look at other parts, so there's value there. And, my hope is people are following me because they're going, whenever this guy publishes something, I look at the headline. And if it's a topic that's of interest to me, I look at it. Because now the other benefit is, hey, this guy really knows his stuff. In the areas that I promote, or for example, in the case of yours, we don't necessarily work with that many coaches. They might look at you and say, hey, let me call Michele. But the whole point being is that I'm showcasing some level of expertise that if they need it now, great, they call me. But if not, it's kind of like in the back of their mind. And they start saying, when we get ready to do a membership site, when we, for example, we do a lot of turbo dial, whatever that specific thing is, he's the guy that you'll call. Or if someone asks them, oh, let me refer you to George because that's what those guys do.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that my business is very similar to yours in that respect. Most of my clients come from referrals, and oftentimes those referrals are people who saw my content and said, I don't need that, right? But their friend did, and so they told them. And I know that, for example, if anybody comes to me about a membership site, I immediately say, I have a friend, George, and, to me, you become the membership site guy.
Yeah,
and, so
and again, that's part of my branding because, I mean, interestingly enough, we do other things, but I don't really talk about them because that's literally that's our favorite thing to do. It doesn't depend on George, which is extremely important because there's only so much of George to go around. And I've kind of built our team around doing that where we can mass produce these things. I mean, we literally build 3 or 4 membership sites a month. So I'm glad that it's not just me who thinks we're the membership guys. You're seeing that too. Now, when we were preparing for this, you mentioned the use of Facebook pixeling, and I think that's interesting. We have another episode that I published on Facebook ads, but it's interesting that you mentioned that. Explain how you do that and what that does for you.
Yeah. So I should caveat this with I'm not a Facebook ads expert.
Yeah, and by the way,
I'm works with me.
And I am not either. And I deferred to Cody Barlow as my resident expert because that's a space that I'm just not, and I don't want to go there.
So from a high level, kind of what I do for my clients is this type of strategy. So kind of whenever I look at things, I think about what would be the way to get the most value out of it from every direction. And when I was blogging, my thought was, well, great that people are coming to the blog and reading the content, but theoretically they could read this and forget about me forever, right? And if we're being honest, that likely is the case with most people because there's tons of content on the internet, whatever. So the idea of using a Facebook pixel to track everyone who has become what I call warm traffic on my website because they've read a blog. And usually I don't even have an opt-in on my blogs or anything like that, although like you, I do link to stuff. they've read a blog, and now using these Facebook pixels, which I'm sure you can find someone to put in place if you're listening to this and thinking that sounds too hard. But they put a pixel on the blog page or on your whole website, and everybody who comes in gets collected into this like basket of people who are familiar with you, and then you can run ads specifically to them.
Right.
And what that does is obviously, they say in email marketing, the 5th to 8th email is where people usually open and make a sale, right?
Right.
And I think of that in terms of any marketing. So I imagine it takes several views of my website and my blog before somebody opts in and becomes part of my list. So that's the way that I make sure that they see me enough times to join my list, and then
Makes sense.
I can email market to them. And then on top of that, just price-wise for Facebook ads, your cost per click and your cost per conversion significantly drops when you're advertising to a warm audience. And that's one way to take the warm audience and advertise only to them. And I do usually skew my ad spend towards the warm audience because I get more for my money.
Sure. And let me ask you, I mean, just ballpark, when you say reduction, it goes from what to what? I mean, just so that people get an idea.
Yeah. Well, so my ads, I'm still in the process of building this, but I have seen penny per click results with clients who have like serious followings, a list of 20,000 that we started this process with. But on the side of like conversions, I've been seeing $1 to $2 myself, which isn't bad at all because of, when I consider how much
Sure.
A customer's worth, that sort of thing. But it really depends. It's hard to rattle off numbers because there are certain things that sell better on Facebook ads. So if you sell products versus services, $1 to $2 per conversion or click is pretty normal, right?
Right.
Versus service-based, it's harder because you can't explain everything you do in one Facebook ad.
Right. Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Very
Yeah.
good. So I know one of the things that I do is I'll publish my post, and then I definitely share it. And I use a tool called CoSchedule, which, by the way, is super for automatically sharing things online. And so I publish it on my Facebook page, on my own profile, and then I'll strategically place it, depending on the topic, in a couple different Facebook groups. So I get the visibility. And then I don't email every single one because I probably would drive the world crazy. But I pick a couple a week that I kind of highlight, including, like, for example, this one. Whenever I do one of these episodes, I definitely make sure to promote these because these actually get a lot of views. So now I'm consistently promoting it to the exact same audience over and over and over again. Again, it's a top of mind campaign. Are there other things like that you use?
Yeah, so I do exactly what you just described. With my team, we publish the blog by the day that we're going to be promoting it. And we use Buffer, although I have used Edgar. I'm not sure if you've heard of Edgar.
No.
If you have a lot of content, like back content, for example, like you do, Edgar is amazing because it creates libraries where you can choose a type of post to post the same time every Monday, and it will pull from that library versus having to schedule individually. And you can also schedule individually.
Sure.
As far as I know, Edgar is the only one with that library technology, but it is significantly more expensive than most of the other options. But I use Buffer currently until I feel like I have a library that will kind of justify Edgar. But we do the same thing. And then the only other thing that I would say I do other than Facebook ads is that I have kind of a system where if I'm really promoting something, I will make all of my opt-ins or my lead magnets thank you page have a button to go view it. So just kind of anywhere where I'm already getting people's attention, I throw it in there. It's pretty similar to Facebook ads. I mean, it's just a way to guarantee their attention goes to that item. Because I do know that Facebook groups, at least in my experience, have been getting consistently more congested and just not as effective, right? So that's part of why I've shifted to this Facebook ad strategy, because I'm not getting the same results that I used to in that way.
Right. So let's switch over to guest posting. If all goes well, I'm going to be published over in Infusionsoft's knowledge base blog.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
so it's on membership sites, and it's some interesting tactics that we've come up with. You got yourself posted in the YF, what was it, Young?
Yeah, it's YFS, Young,
Oh,
Fabulous, Self-Employed.
right.
Yeah.
So I know for me, getting published in that, I mean, that's like my target audience because I work a lot with other
Yeah,
partners like yourself. You're looking for
exactly.
professional women, coaches, entrepreneurs. So what are the kind of things that people should look like as they're looking for spots to
Yeah.
become guest posts?
Well, I think the biggest thing you already just mentioned is the target audience, right? Like I could get published, well, I shouldn't say I could get, but I could attempt to get published with many outlets. But of course, they're not necessarily going to have any impact revenue-wise or even lead-wise if it's the wrong audience,
No,
right?
right. And you had mentioned,
Yeah,
you had even mentioned earlier, when we were preparing for this, that like the Huffington Post now will accept anybody's,
yeah.
which it kind
Yeah,
of
so
devalues.
yeah, HuffPost was on my list, and I dropped it off when you stop being able to submit to specific, like the business section, for example. Like I would want to be published in the business or marketing section of HuffPost. They stopped doing that when Ariana left or whatever, and they started making it so you can instantly publish yourself via the blog section. I was in shock. To me, that's like, why bother?
Yeah.
And I don't say that to like demerit anybody who uses it. Like
Sure,
that's
sure.
fine. But to me, if the goal is to use it to establish yourself as an expert, it needs to be on an outlet that people consider to have, a bar or a standard
Sure, sure.
of value, right? And so that's why I really did like YFS as kind of my first go-to because one, it does fit my target audience and its branding alone, plus just who views it, but also they don't accept everything and they are well known for not accepting quite a bit. So I know personally if somebody I know gets published on YFS, I'm like, okay, it must be a quality article.
Right, right.
Versus if somebody got published on HuffPost, I'd be like, well, I could have put my grocery list in and they would have accepted it at this point. So, but it's sad. I mean, I'm sad that that's the way that HuffPost went because it was really a great opportunity, I think, because it served so many people that you didn't really have to worry if your audience would find you because kind of everybody is familiar with HuffPost, whereas YFS, for example, you're not familiar with it at all, I can tell,
Yeah,
which makes sense because you're not their target audience,
yeah,
but everybody knows HuffPost.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're looking for the ladies.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things I've started doing recently is I look, for example, the Infusionsoft knowledge base. It's called the
Yeah.
learning.infusionsoft.com. And so what I've started doing is I start looking at who else is writing in there, and then you kind of reverse engineer
Yeah.
it. Where else have they published? Because if they're, you look at an article and it seems like it's targeting the same audience that I target, then I
Yeah.
look to see where else they're publishing to see if maybe those are potential places for me to try to get a guest post.
Yeah. That's smart. I'm going to try that. I haven't done that.
Yeah. So I mean,
I can think of a few people.
yeah. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of research involved. But once you start becoming familiar with these other outlets, you can become a regular on somebody else's. And interestingly enough, people appreciate it because it's not like in some areas, it's not like there's tons of people that are available to write for it. And some of these outlets are
Absolutely.
looking for writers that are interested in writing for them.
Yeah, I think there's a real barrier of perception as far as kind of getting the guts, I think, to attempt to be a guest post anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it is that idea that there's tons of, if you want to, everyone must want to. And so there's got to be tons of competition. But I think the reality is that people don't create valuable quality content on the level that those who do think everyone else does.
Yeah.
I think, for example, like to you, writing valuable quality content is like, yeah, of course, everybody does that. But the reality is that not everybody's doing that.
Yeah. Well, and not only, I mean, I started blogging, gosh, in '06, so it's been over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I go back to some of my original stuff, and it's like, oh, that stuff was terrible. So, you know, over time you get an appreciation for, first of all, how to write it, and then the other one is how to make it so that, you know, it's both interesting, informative, showcases your knowledge, you know, and it serves their purpose, it serves your purpose.
Yeah, I have a friend who has a very successful copywriting business, and she helps people with their messaging, and she and I recently did an interview on how to meet people in the middle. So how to use your voice, but also cater to your customer. And usually people get trapped in either one or the other. Either they're using their own voice and the customer is saying who gives a crap what you have to say. And then the other option is they're trying so hard to sell that they're selling to everyone, selling to no one, et cetera, all the cliches. But yeah, so kind of that meeting in the middle where somebody knows that it's you who wrote it, but at the same time, they don't care who wrote it because it's so valuable to them that they just want the content.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Michele, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been, I mean, it's been informative for me. You know, I'm sure the folks listening in will find it interesting as well. So, you know, thank you for cutting time out of your busy day to join me. And
of course.
We'll make sure to get this published soon.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm sure I will be talking to you soon, George.
Okay. Take care.
All right.